conscious that a teaching day is so full on, and it's 3:30, 4:45, and you're now joining me for this. So thank you very much. It's really lovely that you can join us. And welcome to those people who are joining us later on and watching the recording. I called this session Putting the Fun into Reading. So fun is one of those words that I think has had a bit of a bad rap, but I'm older and stroppier now, and I'm just going to use the word that I like to use. And frankly, through all of my experiences in education, I think there's a lot to be said for putting fun into what we do in the classroom. And I'm going to share a few synonyms for you of the kind of fun that I'm actually referring to, because fun's a very generic term, and there are certain layers within that word that I want to encapsulate and share with you. But I'm not going to be worried about that being a rude word anymore. I'm just going to use it because I really firmly believe that we've got young people in front of us who are desperate to be enthralled and have fun with reading. So let's have a look at some of the ways that we might be able to do that. So in this session, we're going to be looking at how we can add drama and energy to what we do. And I'm going to look at a few different areas with you. And the first, and probably one of the most important things I want to think about, is the art in reading and what that actually looks like and what that means. To do that, we're going to look at a few different key elements behind that, one of which is echo reading. We're going to look at what that is and what that means and what it can look like in the classroom. We're going to look at prosody and the prosodic features of echo reading, because that's what really brings it to life. And to help us with that, we're going to look at some drama techniques, and then also about how the value of song and music should not be underestimated. Okay. Reading a discount ticket to everywhere. I like that one. Before we can get going with that, I want to share with you the blob tree. Now, when I very first started teaching, someone showed me the blob tree, and this was 20 odd years ago, and I still love it. I still think it's a really useful tool, useful part of our toolkit to help us to look at the layers behind what's happening with our young people. So the blob tree is a very old psychologist, Pip Wilson, who designed this. He's not very old. I'm sure he's not very old, but it was designed a long time ago. But it's got many different uses, and it helps us to start conversations with young people, and it helps us in teacher training, and it helps us in all sorts of different ways to look at the different blobs on that tree and work out.
Miss, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can't see your slide changing.
Okay, that's good to know.
Sorry.
So can nobody see that?
There's people in the chat saying they can't see it as well.
Okay, thank you for.
There we go. I can see it now.
Okay, that's weird. All right, so maybe I'll go with that then. I just stopped the slideshow and went back to the actual. Okay, so should I keep it like that?
That works for me. Does that work for everyone else?
Is it a bit small? I was on the slideshow. That's weird. That doesn't work though. Okay.
Maybe you could zoom in a bit at the bottom of your PowerPoint where it says, I think it's like 59%. Yeah, there we go. That's a bit better. And maybe get rid of the notes bit.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
that's better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It's so weird not being able to see you all. One day we'll be in a room together, maybe, and that'd be better. Thank you for letting me know. I was going to be chatting away there and not even have known. Thank you. Okay, so do jump in and tell me if anything else isn't viewable. But here's the blob tree, which I'm sure you will have seen. And if you haven't seen, go and check it out. It's available online just very easily. But it helps us to remember where our children are, where our young people are. And we'll have a class of probably 30 different blobs, just like those, who have all sorts of different emotions when it comes to looking at reading material. We'll have number 5s who are on the floor refusing. We'll have number 10s who absolutely love it and want to read to the whole class all the time. We'll have number 19s who are doing well, but maybe are nervous and don't think they're doing so well. We'll maybe have number 8s who don't engage at all. But it's a really good visual metaphor for us to try and get a handle on where our young people are when we get to the point of looking at reading material. And bearing that in mind is so useful, to think about that emotional state behind our young people's approach to reading the written word, which is a courageous activity. Writing's a courageous activity, but so is reading, because it is an element of all our young people that can be really multifaceted and have all sorts of different prior experience behind it. All those early literacy experiences will have led them to think where they are on that blob tree right now. And of course, we know that there is a lot of data behind all of this that tells us that we have some barriers to try and bridge. 2.5 million words a year for that top 10% of our 9-year-olds that they're able to read. Sounds like someone's doing the hoovering. Maybe it's a good idea all to go on mute. Would that be better? And unless, of course, you can't see what I'm doing and then unmute and tell me. Whereas that bottom 10%, 8,000 words a year. So that's a huge discrepancy between that top and bottom percentile. At age 7, that top 25%, 7,100 words, whereas the bottom quartile just 3,000. And what that really means is that basically the top 50% read in a year twice what that bottom 50% are reading. So they're reading double if they're in that top 50% of children. So we've got a real barrier to bridge here. And essentially it's a bit of the Matthew effect, where, you know, we've got the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. We've got the word rich getting richer because they're able to read, and we've got the word poor getting poorer because that barrier is increasingly challenging. So we've got lots of barriers that we need to bridge, and let's think about how we might do that. How we get those children to read deeply and independently. What do we do about that estimated 20% of children who are not leaving primary school each year at the expected level, fluent enough to access that academic curriculum? Okay, so what do? We think about the art in the art of reading. And the art in the art of reading is something that will enable us to really meet these year 6 objectives that look quite similar once we get up to Key Stage 3, that look quite similar when we're looking at year 4 and year 5. But I've gone with year 6 as a good sort of middle ground to look at the objectives. So these objectives I've picked out: drawing inference, identifying language contributes to meaning, figurative language, participating in discussion, explaining and discussing, formal presentations, justification for their views, inference, all of these elements that we have to ensure our young people are familiar and confident with, we can really promote through looking at the art in the art of reading. And what do I mean by the art in the art of reading? Well, it's the music in the language. It's the drama in the language. It's the breath. It's the voiced emotion of language. Because as Maya Angelou says, words mean more than what is set down on paper. And it's that intangible art that will really make a big difference to the joy and the passion and the understanding of what is being read. So I want to focus on these elements of what I call the art in the art of reading with you now. Okay, now I'm going to be brave and hope that we can all see this. So to get to the art of reading, I think this is a really good premise. It's called the fun theory, and I'm going to show you a little video and pray that it works okay. And it's the concept that we can persuade people to do things if we make it sufficiently engaging and fun to do so. So that's meant to just open like that. Okay, can someone just unmute and tell me you can see the YouTube screen so that I know you can see it?
We can only see the PowerPoint.
Yeah. Can you?
You might have to open it before you have your PowerPoint open. Sorry, Hoover's in the background.
Okay. Oh. Okay, right. Do you know what? What I'll do is tell you what,
You could send us the link in the chat function and we can all.
Yeah, that's just exactly what I was just going to do. Let's get that and then stop sharing. Go back here. Okay, so I'll try and play it, but if it doesn't play, there's the link in the chat box, and hopefully you can just have a watch. It's only about a minute and a half. Let's see if that shares okay. Okay. So, sorry if you couldn't hear the sound. I thought I'd try to set it up with audio. Apologies if you couldn't, but there's the link. Hopefully you could see the link later. But the basic idea, let me just share my screen again with my PowerPoint. Share. Here we go. The basic idea of that whole ideology is that if we make something sufficiently fun, we get great engagement and we get people wanting to change behaviours and to be a part of what we're trying to encourage. And so the synonyms I've just picked out that I mean when I talk about fun are things like making it captivating and compelling, fascinating, absorbing, enthralling and enchanting. Those are the sides of fun that we want to encapsulate when we're looking at something as important to our young people as reading. Okay, so let's have a look at the first of those, which is echo reading. So echo reading, see what I've done there with my title there? I was quite proud of that, echo reading. Echo reading is a rereading strategy, essentially, that's really designed to help really develop expressive, fluent readers. And in echo reading, the teacher simply reads a short segment of text, sometimes a sentence, sometimes a short paragraph, and then the students literally echo it back. And by hearing that really fluent reader modelling how it sounds to bring that piece of text to life has a huge impact on how important and how deep the understanding of that piece of text can be. So the research tells us that it really does help to have these fluent readers modeling if students are going to really understand how it should sound. Because when we read silently in our heads, what we hear as fluent readers ourselves is not what our young people hear when they are reading. And very often that inner voice of reading, which is so silent and unheard by the teacher, is so staccato and so difficult for those readers that struggle to decode text. And in fact, look at that, in Greek and Roman times, it was frowned upon to read silently to yourself. It was something that you did as a collaborative exercise. So according to relatively recent research, there are 4 steps that really help this echo reading strategy. The first is finding really good predictable books with limited print. And this would be if you're dealing with younger years in particular, but also perhaps with struggling students. Read an entire story to the student, then read one sentence pointing at each word. Students then reread that sentence pointing at each word. And it's the pointing and the looking at text together that really does make a difference here. Echo reading really, for short segments of text that's quite finite, is really successful to bring key bits of text to life, and then to model that echo with your students, with your pupils, and asking pupils then to echo read to one another, and that turns into something called choral reading then, where they're sharing the reading of a text together. It really does bring, I like to think of it as moving from 2D on the printed page to 3D, where you're bringing that life and breath and drama into the words on the page. Moving from 2D to 3D is kind of a nice way to think about that. It also helps when we're thinking about things like inference. You know, I'm conscious we've got primary and secondary colleagues with us here, but that's something we're all driven to look at, is reading between the lines. What can we infer from text? And actually, the minute we bring it to life and we move it from 2D to 3D, you've got so much else to get a handle on, to grip onto. What is it that is being inferred as we're reading particular texts, particular stories? And the potential benefits are huge. I've just pulled a few of them out here. But there are all sorts of things that echo reading can really support us in the classroom with. One of which is for young readers, or maybe for very skilled readers, they might want to rush through, and this will slow them down to really think about what we call the prosody of that text, how we bring it to life. Reflect on meaning. For those real experts in the room, they can showcase their skills. They can really bring to life their own expertise and skills, and that's brilliant. Just like our musicians, you know, we want them to play and show the class what they can do, or the brilliant sportsmen. For our really expert readers, let's give them a platform to showcase their skills and lead echo reading sessions with the class or a small group, depending on how they feel, where they are on that blob tree. Then there's a real power from sharing something together, learning from it together, walking through a journey of unpicking text together. Of course, the impact on comprehension is huge, with intonation, with fluency, and it brings drama and music into the room. If you've seen anything I've done before, you'll know I'm a massive advocate of drama in all areas of English and literacy teaching, because with all these things, it just brings in a breath of life to what we're trying to articulate. And anything that gets a bit of drama through the door, as echo reading does, is one of the top things on my list. So I don't know if you are on Twitter, but if you are, you might be a follower of Tom Brassington. He's a teacher and an author, and he had something to say on echo reading quite recently. And in fact, I messaged him and I said, that's so interesting. I wonder if I can share it. And he gave me the thumbs up. So here I am sharing his tweet. And he said, I remember the first time I heard somebody read, like really read. It was in my A-level class. So it took a while for him to reach this point. My teacher read to us from Enduring Love. And as the words passed her lips, silence fell in the room. It felt as though every word she read held 100 memories, as though she'd written them herself. I clearly recall the piercing silence she let hang in the air after the line, "It's beautiful here, and we're still unhappy." And I think that that is just a really powerful message for us all to hang on to, is that that still lives large in Tom Brassington's memory. He still remembers that moment. And there is something so memorable and meaningful, isn't there, about a teacher or an expert reader bringing a text to life and sharing something of themselves. And I think that's a big part of echo reading, is that we're sharing something of ourselves and our own interpretation with our young people. And it also gets over that bridge of reading being quite daunting. It's quite a silent space, reading, for many of us, and many of our students find that particularly difficult. It's silent time, we're alone, faced with page after page of text. And actually, for us who are confident readers, that can be magical and wonderful, and we curl up with a book and a cup of tea and we can't be happier. But it's a daunting space for many of our pupils. So actually an echo reading idea in the classroom can really bridge that daunting gap, and bring reading into a shared experience where we're looking at things collaboratively and talking about how it is to be a reader of these words. That's the sort of metacognitive edge to echo reading. Okay, let's move on to prosody and the prosodic features of bringing life into text. So prosody, if you're a linguistics student, will be very familiar to you, but if you were perhaps a literature student, may not have been something that you focused on. It's essentially bringing music and drama into reading. It's reading aloud with pitch, stress, and timing to convey meaning. Or, as the brilliantly named Schwaffenflügel and Flanagan Nap, which frankly is a song in its own right, I think, say in The Music of Reading Aloud, that's the book they've written, they say that when good readers read aloud, it sounds like music. The music of reading aloud is what we call prosody, reading prosody. It's the Latin word prosodia. Apologies to any Latin scholars for my pronunciation there. That simply means an accent of a syllable, or in Greek it means an accent mark or the modulation of voice. So it's about bringing extra meaning into the written text and moving it from 2D to 3D. And here's the quote I was referring to earlier from Maya Angelou, who says it takes the human voice to infuse these written words with deeper meaning. And that's prosody right there. And that might well be one of our most challenging aspects to developing fluency. And it also might well be something that we don't give as much attention to, because we're so mindful of the need to decode and make sure we are able to understand how the blends and the phonemes all work together to give us each individual word, that perhaps the actual fluency and the prosody of a piece is something we leave a little bit unsaid. But that's where echo reading really steps up and gives us something to work on collaboratively. Hearts for Learning have done a very comprehensive piece of research into reading fluency in particular, but have focused on echo reading within that. And in their blog, they say that actually it's a real eye-opener how much improvement can be gained by looking at this prosodic knowledge and what it means in relation to reading comprehension. Because obviously if we are reading it with sufficient music and drama, that's because we've got that comprehension. If we can model that as teachers, if we can give our classes that real understanding of what it looks like to bring this text to life and have them echo that and echo it in small bite-sized chunks, building up to longer chunks, then I think that that's a really interesting way to think about how we infuse words with deeper meaning. And of course, those reluctant readers are going to hear what good looks like, what good sounds like, and what fluent sounds like. Okay. So again, from the book, The Music of Reading Aloud, those brilliantly named Thrush and Flugel and Flanagan Knapp have come up with, very helpfully for us, 6 key areas for us to look at with fluency. And they've made it alliterative to make it a bit easier for us to remember. But it's all to do with pitch, power, pace, punctuation, pause, and passion. And I expect that as teachers, we do focus on many of those, but perhaps we don't focus on them all, or we don't give much attention and time to them according to what's going on in our very busy worlds. So for me, when I was busy teaching, pace would be something I'd be quite keen on, you know, that we've got to speed up and slow down. But maybe I didn't talk enough about passion. Maybe I didn't talk enough about pitch and that rise and fall in tone and intonation. And it's very difficult to articulate that, but it's quite magical to just echo that and to hear that and to hear it modeled really effectively. Each aspect here really works in partnership to give us that rich, vibrant reading performance. So it's about modeling and being able to pay attention to each of those different elements there. And it strikes me as well, I never did this, but I wish I had, that we have a whole music department in secondary schools that we could be collaborating with here. And in primary schools, we've always got fabulous musicians. And to think about how we bring music knowledge and understanding into the delivery of the spoken word, I think has real potential for some joined up thinking, for some curriculum cohesion around reading in a musical way. Now, in an ideal world, I'm going to play you a bit of Grace Nichols reading her own poem. Let me see if this will work for us. It's simply audio. You don't need to see it. So let's see.
Pray a song for my mother. You were water to me, deep and noble and fathoming.
Can you hear that?
And green and mantling. You were sunrise to me.
Yes, somebody said yes.
And warm and streaming. You were the fish's revenue to me, the flame tree spread to me, the crab's leg, the fried plantain smell, replenishing, replenishing. Oh, they're like features, they say.
Just so beautifully read. I'm sorry if it wasn't too clear in parts. What, dismiss that. What I'll do is I'll make sure that all of the links are there for you so you can hear that in your own time as well. But hopefully what you saw there, what you heard there, sorry, was Grace Nichols reading her own poem, Praise Song for My Mother. And she reads it so beautifully. And I think that when we are looking for models of reading, we of course can go beyond our own modeling in the classroom. We have got access online to a huge raft of excellent, fluent expressive, dramatic, musical readers, and to make use of those and to learn from them so that our pupils see us echoing. You know, go to your wide futures, you said. The last line of that poem, she reads so beautifully. That's something we could all echo together. Okay. Can I just check you can still all see my PowerPoint screen? Is that still working okay? I'm feeling a bit nervous about it because it doesn't look like it normally does to me. No, you can't. Right, hang on. I was just thinking that doesn't look right to me. Hang on. Let me try and share again. There we go. I think that looks okay now. That looks a bit more like it should. Okay. So that was Grace Nichols, Praise Song for My Mother. And if you go to places like Poetry Archive, you can.
Helen.
Can you see that now? Can you see?
No, I can't see it, but maybe other people can see. I'll just listen.
No, that's so annoying.
Yeah, great. Some people can see it, so please carry on, please.
Well, I don't know what's happening there. I wonder if Teams is doing, I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time on Teams, and about once a week it does something really strange that I don't understand what it's saying or doing. But for some reason, okay, I'll try one more. I'll stop sharing, and yeah, it's saying Microsoft Whiteboard for me as well. I don't know why. I don't want it to say whiteboard. Open share tray. Okay, I've tried one more time. Is that working now?
I think it's working for some people and not working for others. So just please carry on.
Okay,
We'll listen.
I'll just keep going. I don't know why that's doing that. Sorry, everybody. Very irritating. Sometimes technology is amazing, and then other times it's really frustrating. And maybe we've hit a frustrating one today. Apologies for that. Okay. Let me tell you a bit about David Didau and some of the points that he has to make on reading aloud. And it makes me cringe slightly, actually, because I think I have probably put my poor year nines through this unwittingly, thinking I was doing the best. But those awful moments where you think, well, he's got his hand up, he wants to have a go. And so you give him a chance to have a read. But it just is not a beautiful moment, perhaps, if you're reading a bit of The Tempest or Much Ado or a bit of The Dream, and you suddenly think Shakespeare, when you're reading that around the class, is actually really pretty dull. One, for those not reading, because the really great readers will have sped on and are reading ahead. And two, because this beautiful poetry being mangled, in David Didau's words, by unskilled, hesitant readers benefits nobody. And all that happens is that our students are increasingly convinced that reading is not for them, or that poetry, especially by Shakespeare, is stupid and not for them. And so I think we have to be really careful about how we approach reading aloud in the classroom so that it feels like it is for everybody. And echo reading is a lovely middle ground for that. It does provide us with that safe space where we can feel as if it's accessible and it's there and meant for everybody. I think echo reading has to be really quite finite. So we choose specific lines or phrases or even a paragraph, and we build up. We start small and we build up with echo reading. And again, I think the model doesn't just have to be us, the teacher. It could be our expert readers. It could be a visitor. It could be the head teacher coming in. It could be something online. It could be the author of the poem themselves, because we can access that on all sorts of platforms. So let's not mangle beautiful poetry so that our young people think reading is not for them. Let's do what we can to try and boost the best version of modelled reading aloud. I think another way we can bring our 2D text to life and make it 3D is through drama. The whole echo reading concept itself does very much value drama and encourage the idea of dramatic interpretation. But there are all sorts of other ideas behind drama that would be of use, that we could really have a place in the classroom at some point. One of them is to thought tap. When you've got a group, let's say, of echo readers, you could do some thought taps where people around them just decide, okay, it's that word in particular that I want to thought tap, and just stop the echo reading. As the student or the pupil is doing that, they pause, and whoever's given the thought tap, put a hand on their shoulder, says, that word should be spoken with a bit more emphasis, a bit quieter. There should be a bigger pause, and then restart. So the concept of thought tap, where other people come in and can contribute their thinking to a particular phrase or word, has some value. But also you can then unpick inference, you can unpick meaning, you can unpick character motivation through the use of thought tap. It's a sort of an extension of the idea of Socratic talk, where you've got an activity going on and then another layer of observation, of observers looking at what's happening and making commentary, either written or remembering, or with a series of questions that they're answering about what's going on in the activity. Socratic talk is that kind of metacognitive process about what does it look like to be learning, whatever the context might be. But that Socratic talk or thought tap, where observers are watching and looking at what's happening with reading of a text or a piece of drama itself, or a hot seating activity, just enables you to unpick at another level the meaning and the inference and the passion behind the words on a page. Other ideas that can be useful might be to use freeze frame, and then think about how you can add text to those freeze frames. So taking a story, taking a piece of narrative and creating a freeze frame around that, and then maybe each one of the characters in the freeze frame comes up with the line of that text and performs that, or has learned an echo reading version of their line that they then bring to life as part of that freeze frame. Word games and tongue twisters are brilliant warm-ups before you get into the nitty-gritty of echo reading, and to sort of bring up the kind of the fun, enthralling element of what we can do with language. I did also think that a use of hats, or I think hats gives you an idea to the kind of different atmospheres and genres that you might want to bring to something. So you might have a piece of text that could be read a number of different ways, and a hat is a good sort of metaphorical clue to show you the type of atmosphere or tone of voice that you want to be using in that piece. And you can swap the hats in and out depending on the tone differences and the changes within that. I think to keep it low stakes, because drama is not everybody's cup of tea, and certainly that extends to our pupils. Not everybody enjoys it or wants to be performing in any way. Then we have to remember all of the different elements and layers to the value of drama, and that includes really small group. You know, just paired work is very low stakes. Keeping things compelling and absorbing, but in that smaller environment. Having people just observing and then feeding back is just as useful and important. And having real audience. So it might well be that you're recording some of the reading, the echo reading. Maybe you're recording it for podcasts. Maybe you're recording it for another year group. Maybe you're able to share it virtually with another school or with another school in a different country even. But to have a real audience does give an additional layer of value to the work that you're doing. And because it might be audio rather than visual, that does keep it lower stakes as well. Okay, let's move on. We've got about another 10 minutes or so, and then hopefully we'll have some time for some questions. Let's move on to some texts. So this is one of my favourite children's stories of all time, and I'm sure it will be ringing a bell to you. You can have a post on the chat box if you've got it already. What book's this from? This is the opening line. And it's so beautiful. In the light of the moon, a little egg lay on a leaf. And things like that, and we've got a few opening lines we're going to look at in a minute. The opening line to a book is a great place to start, to bring a piece of text to life, to really try and unpick the passion and the insight and the drama and the musicality behind an opening line. Because as we all know, the opening line of a piece of writing is often one of the most important to set the tone and the genre and all of that. So let's have a look at some more opening lines and see if we can guess what they are and see if we can think about how we might read them. Okay, hopefully you can all see that. So hopefully the chat box is going mad. I can't see it, but hopefully you're all busy guessing. So number one, Marley was dead to begin with. Fantastic opening line. I didn't actually say, did I, for the previous one? Sorry, that was the hungry caterpillar. Very hungry caterpillar. For those of you who didn't get it, but I'm sure it was all there on the chat box. So that first one is, of course, Christmas Carol. Brilliant beginning. And you can do so much with that. It's only 6 words, but you can manipulate and change and bring that to life and decide as a class or as a group or individually, what's the best way to read that? Next one. It was 7 minutes after midnight. The dog was lying on the grass in the middle of the lawn in front of Mrs. Shears's house. Its eyes were closed. Again, so much information. So much about the tone that we can bring to life there. That one is, of course, Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which I still haven't seen as a play, which I really want to. My daughter has, but I haven't seen it yet. Next one. In an old house in Paris that was covered with vines lived 12 little girls in 2 straight lines. That's another favourite. That one, of course, is Madeline. And let's whiz on to number 5. Let's just do number 5 as well. Can't ever resist reading this one to children. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another, his mother called him Wild Thing. And Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to bed without eating anything. And that one, of course, is Where the Wild Things Are. But the minute you've got some direct speech in there, again, that gives you another level because you can bring in character. And eventually, you're actually not reading a book. You're reading a play script, aren't you? The moment you've got direct speech in there. So have a play around with opening lines. They can be really interesting and quite a nice little way into echo reading. Before you think about your own texts, you could just do that as a standalone. See, have a toe in the water with echo reading with some opening lines from some of your favourite books, from some books you know your class will love. Start small. It's always a good idea. Okay, let's move on to thinking about the music element, to adding a bit of drama and prosody, thinking about the prosody for reading texts. So the word fluency, actually comes from the Latin word fluentem, which means to flow. And fluency really is that bridge between word recognition and comprehension. It's the art in the art of reading. And Tim Shanahan from Illinois University has a lot to say about how music can really play a role within that. Oh, that bit hasn't come out very well, has it? That should say, singing has real potential to improve reading. And there's some research there around an American study where they looked at repeated regular singing and reading of songs for middle school pupils. So they were about for our year 5, year 6, year 7. And they found that there was a really significant gain, 7 months gain over 9 weeks for those pupils who were following that idea about regularly repeated singing and reading of songs. Because of course, when you're singing, or even when you're listening to singing and looking at the lyrics, you're reading, and you are simply adding the time that you're spending reading. And when you sing, to increase that time spent reading has a really beneficial effect for all forms of reading. So Dr. Tim Rusinski, who is a Professor of Education in Kent State University, really has a lot to say on this. And I'll share with you a link later in the chat box around his research around that, because there's quite a lot of resources that he's got that you can have a look at. But he talks about making songs really memorable and enjoyable because the concept of music is so memorable. You know, it was always that's how the news was told back in the early days, wasn't it? Wandering minstrels went around with songs, and that was how the news was conveyed around. It was that oral tradition. It does make things easier to learn, helps develop a really robust sight vocabulary because you're repeating and regularly going over familiar text. And of course, it is a form of poetry. So song lyrics, in whatever form, are embedded, you know, with rhyme, with assonance, with those linguistic features that bring our language to life. So I know, for instance, and this is thanks to Shireen Wilkinson, thank you, Shireen, that Adele has a lot of idiom in her songs. So if you are listening to Adele, look out for the idiom. If you're listening to Stormzy, you'll probably find a lot of metaphor in there. Obviously go for the radio edits of these things. Just little caution, word of warning. But you might find that traditional nursery rhymes are really good for noun choice. Whatever form of music you go for, there will be a real benefit within there that makes reading come to life in a musical way. And of course, that benefits what we've been saying about echo reading. Okay, I'll switch on from that one. So all of these ideas around drama and music and prosody and echo reading, we could call a reader's theatre. We could bring it all together cohesively as a reader's theatre. And that's an American school, top left. They haven't spelt theatre wrong. They've just spelt it in the American way. So bringing the ideas of prosodic features brought to life, articulated, modelled, multifaceted layers behind the decoding of text and reading for meaning and reading for understanding and inference and all of those things that we looked at in those objectives at the beginning, we could collate as a reader's theatre. And there's a school, there are many schools doing this, I'm sure, but there's a school who share very generously what they do called Shotton Hall, and they're part of the researchschool.org. So you can go and have a look at what they're up to. And this is what they do. These are the steps that they follow when they're looking at this guide to reader's theatre, bringing in all of those attributes that make the passion behind the words. So they go from the adult as model, And again, that doesn't have to be the teacher in the classroom, although most frequently I'm sure it will be, but that can also be something that you're listening to collectively, or an invited speaker to give it, you know, maybe a bit more status if you're starting something, a new topic. Then they echo read it. Children echo that back, looking at emulating intonation, tone, speed, and all of those features we've been looking at. Then you text allocate. You decide who's going to work on what, who's going to echo what. And of course, you can think about who your experts in the room are, and they might well take on a different role, that they're maybe overseeing other groups. Choral reading, essentially where you're echoing that initial reading in a group situation. And then they go on and have a look at close reading. And here I think is somewhere you could play around with all sorts of other features, like bringing in a bit of music underneath to add to the tone. What's the tone that's being created here? Could your music department, could your music teachers support with some kind of musical accompaniment to some key pieces of reading? When you're looking at text marking, again, talk to your music teachers about this, because there will be all sorts of features that you could use that have musicality crossover to show that this is where we want to pause. This is where we want to really add power to a word. We want to really have a staccato word here, or we want to have a higher pitch here. And I think in terms of curriculum cohesion, that would be really interesting to think about how you work together with other departments in secondary, or with your music experts in primary. Obviously practice and thinking about how you might record it potentially, and then maybe tweak and edit as you've heard what you've performed. And in that performance, you could do a straightforward performance to each other, to the class, just to one adult. You might record it if you're not confident to perform in front of people. But again, with those more advanced drama skills, perhaps moving into Key Stage 3 or top of Key Stage 2, you could think about adding thought taps. You could play with the expression. You could think about inference, so that in that performance, maybe you have a moment where everyone says freeze, and you bring in some of those drama skills that we've referred to. And then lastly, reflection time, which is that really crucial metacognitive step to understand what good looks like. What was it that made that successful, and how could that be moved forward or improved? So have a look at them. That's Shotton Hall research from researchschool.org. And again, this PowerPoint will be shared, so you'll have the access to the links that are contained in it. So the Bookmark Trust, who I do some work with, shared this on their social media last week. They asked some of the young people who they're working with, how do you feel when it's time to read? And they just got them to draw a little face and tell them, and to write a few words down. And we've got 4 very different faces there. And I hope that those 4 different faces would find something of value in what we've just discussed for that last 45, 50 minutes. So that the one who says, I like to go on adventures, I like reading, they've got something that they can feel excited about from echo reading, just as much as the little face that says, oh, I get embarrassed, it's just too much. So maybe there's a way that echo reading can help to think about moving that young person away from that feeling of embarrassment and more to a repetitive, supportive, modelled version of reading out loud. And that little girl, bottom left, who says, I'm a bit shy, I'm a bit nervous. I gave myself a smiley face, but also a cloud because I'm nervous. And how do we part the clouds for those young readers who are nervous? Well, I think that within that understanding of prosodic features, there's enough there for us to really unpick and get underneath, bringing 2D words to life in a 3D way. And thinking about what Myron Angelou says, it takes the human voice to infuse words with a deeper meaning. There's so much to love, isn't there? So much to love. And we've all got our favourites, and we've all got our own agendas and our own backstory with reading. So it's not a one size fits all in any way, but I hope that there's enough there for us to unpick and be excited by, to be enthralled by, to be compelled by, and to have fun with. So just a few things to look out for that might be of interest. There's a book there that I think is very interesting to have a look at. It works well for year 6 and year 7 transition, so that's quite a nice thing to help with vocabulary, and of course that lies and underpins everything we know about reading. There's a whole podcast series with Oxford Education, and one of those podcasts is specifically about echo reading. So do go and have a look for that. You'll find that on the Oxford University Press website. And we'd love you to join our community at Chatterstars. Just sign up and join for an account, and then you'll get all of our newsletters and Oracy tasks and all of the things that we share very regularly. So if I now stop sharing, then I'm hopeful that we might be able to have some questions for the last 5 or 10 minutes. But a huge thank you for everybody, and I'm so sorry that the tech didn't work particularly well at times. But if anyone has a question, then do please unmute, turn your camera on, give me a wave, and let's have a chat for the last 5 or 10 minutes. That's quite funny. Somebody said HP is flashing on my screen. I do hope not. I'm just looking at the chat. Lots of you got all of it. Well done. Yes, I'll definitely get a copy of the PowerPoint to you all. I'll make sure that Rebecca's got that, and then that can be shared. Do you use echo reading in secondary as well? All the time, all the time. It's so valuable because our young people don't always know what good sounds like. And it's so vital that they do know what good sounds like. So yes, we do use it in secondary. Any other questions? Do fire away. Shame we're not all in a room together having a cup of tea and a biscuit. We can have a proper chat now. Never mind. Okay, thank you, Jackie. How would these techniques work with a long, dense class text? Really good question. Thank you, Jackie. I think it's the absolute key to echo reading successfully is to keep it finite. So if you've got a really long, dense class text, then choose wisely the sections that you want to echo read. So it might be that there's a particular character that you're working on, and you might just choose 4 or 5 extracts from the book around that character. Might be that you're looking at setting, might be that you're looking at tone, whatever it might be. Choose finite sections and bring those to life with echo reading. Because yeah, that you can't possibly do it all. So choose wisely, and that's a curriculum planning moment right there, isn't it? That's your department meetings. Those are the moments that you discuss. Okay, we need to make sure that we've brought to life the tone or the atmosphere of The Woman in Black. Which sections are we going to pick out and share? How suitable, thank you for that, Jackie. Robert Long says, how suitable would echo reading be for non-fiction texts? equally suitable and equally brilliant. I can think of lots of non-fiction texts that could do with a bit of extra life and energy injected into them. So model that yourself, go and find others reading those non-fiction texts. Again, be really clear about what it is you're going to pick out. and make it finite, so that you're not going on and on with too long. And it might be that you start with just your opening paragraph, your opening sentence, and then echo read that around the class and pick up on the cues and the clues within that piece of text that give you more information about what's coming, and then echo read further on. But yes, definitely non-fiction text as well. Thanks for that, Robert. You're welcome. Anybody else? Oh, I can see someone. Hi, Joe. I knew there were people behind the initials. How can we apply this to maths? Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Well, I'm not a maths teacher. You might have gathered. I'm an English teacher. But my number one premise to everything we approach is what's the most authentic self? Well, in maths, very much as you get into secondary, certainly, but also in primary, it's about understanding the question, isn't it? It's about understanding the narrative. What's the question actually asking for? And I think to bring meaning to that, I mean, a lot of maths questions are really quite narrative driven, aren't they? So a lot of that can be supported and helped through intonation and through fluency and through articulating the question. So I would absolutely be reading those maths questions and asking children to echo them back, because I think you'll get a better comprehension of what's being asked for if the question itself is being read fluently and with the arts that we've talked about behind that art of reading. So if we were in a room together now, we could have a proper debate about this, and there'll be other maths teachers who could pop in ideas as well. But to have a fluent reading of the question, I think is half the battle, because it's about comprehension and understanding, isn't it? I think someone might have a hand up. Please just jump in if you've got a hand up, because there's so many on the call I can't quite see who it is. Thank you for all your thank yous, that's lovely.